We've got barbecue back here. You're all invited. Welcome to the Sloopcast. Just me. Kyle's got some work travel going on this Sunday night. So rolling just me at the moment. I don't know why I said at the moment. He's not going to just magically show up. But how is everyone out there in YouTube and podcast land doing? Jared with the Sloopcast. We got some updates. This is a recruiting episode, and I have lumped the portal into recruiting episodes, which makes sense to me. Seems like the same basic building block idea, which is what we're doing here, the Buckeye building blocks. This is our recruiting show. Let's do some portal updates real quick. Actually, before we even get into the recruiting thing, huge wins getting Jack Sawyer and Ransom back on the squad, both returning to the Ohio State Buckeyes. They have announced that they are not going to the NFL at this time, and they will be returning. So those are two huge wins for Ohio State, two enormous, huge wins for Ohio State. I think it'll be interesting to see in general what the Ohio State defensive front will look like next year, but I think that's a different conversation for a different episode. I wouldn't be surprised to see him change it up a little bit, but again, different topic for a different episode. Let's talk about the portal. Big week for Ohio State in the portal. Ohio State has required Will Howard out of the portal. Will Howard, obviously a quarterback from Kansas State. Kansas State quarterback is, this will be his last year in college football playing for Ohio State. He is a super senior. He has 1 year remaining eligibility, which I think is exactly what Ohio State was looking for. I think a lot of people were looking at some younger quarterbacks who are out in the market, out on the transfer portal, like Ohio State should go get that guy. Ohio State should go get... I believe Ryan Day and staff really like Lincoln Kienholz. They really like Aaron Nolan, and I don't think they wanted to jeopardize either of those two players' statuses with Ohio State. So I think it's a wise move. I think it was in their plan to not disrupt the future of the quarterback room. It's yet to see what Devin Brown will do in response to this. I think what the goal is, if you're, Ryan Day, or, what you would want to see as an Ohio State fan, is you want to see Will Howard and Devin Brown go into spring with this a quarterback competition and have one of them win it. That's the goal here. You want these two guys to go into competition and see who wins. You want them to compete against each other. You want the other one to make the other one better. And you want the other one to eventually back up the other one in case someone gets hurt in the season. Modern college football, I don't know how realistic all of that is. We'll see if Devin Brown sticks. I believe Ohio State players, because of the late bowl game, have till I think it's the 10th. I might be mistaken about that. Have until January 10th to enter the transfer portal. I would be surprised to see Devin Brown do that, but there's the second portal that opens up after spring ball. And I think if Will Howard does win the job, or if Devin Brown feels like Will Howard's winning the job, then he will have a decision to make as far as his future at Ohio State. And we'll see what happens. But yeah, as far as Will Howard and Devin Brown go, I think the goal essentially is that these guys, or one of these guys, are the quarterback this year. And then I think you see, I think it depends upon if Devin Brown wins, then this obviously changes things. He has more eligibility remaining. But, if Will Howard wins and if Devin Brown leaves, it does set up the 2025 quarterback competition between Kienholz and Nolan, which will be an interesting situation to watch for sure. Ohio State has brought in Seth McCullen. He is the center he was the center for Alabama. He was playing in the playoff game. He had some bad snaps. So I know a lot of people have some mixed feelings about bringing him in. I'll say that I don't think that it is determined at this point if he will be a center or a guard at Ohio State. And I also would say that a player is not defined by their worst game. So he had some snapping issues on a really big stage, and that, of course, is concern. Like, I don't know if you totally ignore that happened. You don't totally ignore that happened, but you also don't condemn him for it. And also, like, Ohio State might be looking to have, I think they're just bringing him in as an interior offensive lineman who can play center. Doesn't mean that he will play center. It means he can play center. And I think that's about it. But you add, I think, a starter for the offensive line. Where is to be determined. We don't know what Jackson is doing at this time. I do hear that, he is seriously considering going pro. And after the season he had this year, I don't think that's a good idea. But we'll see what he does. Yeah, but those are the two portal pickups for Ohio State this week. And it should also be noted that Ohio State appears at this time to be the favorite to pick up running back Judkins from Ole Miss. From what I am hearing, from my understanding, is that Ohio State will move on Judkins if Henderson decides to go to the NFL. So it looks like Ohio State will have a running back, an experienced running back on the team next year to share carries. I'm going to blank on names. Of course, I'm going to blank on names. You're going to have a running back come in to split carries with Dallin Hayden. Dallin Hayden's going to be your number 2 running back next year. And then you'll have either Henderson or Judkins as your RB1 next year. That's how I see this playing out. I know a lot of people are like, oh, bring in Judkins regardless, but I don't think so personally. Because when it comes to the transfer portal, and I know that, like, it's less obvious. Like in the NFL, you have a salary cap and everyone knows what the salary cap is and everyone has the same salary cap, and people are out there, doing the math on the salary cap. So it's a little bit more obvious for people to track. But Ohio State, or rather the NIL at Ohio State, if we put all that in quotation, Ohio State has a salary cap. They have a budget. They have an NIL budget. And I don't think that you spend the money in order to have both Judkins and Henderson on the team when you do have Dallin Hayden, who is excellent right there. I would much rather that money be budgeted towards bringing in a second offensive lineman along with McCullough. That's my 2 cents. Anyway, those are portal. As far as I'm not aware of any players at this moment who are currently in the portal that Ohio State is targeting. That there's a mutual interest with anyone else currently in the portal. So that's my understanding right now, that there's not an additional target other than Judkins out there with, Ohio State has an active relationship with. All right, let's move over to the mock. Let's move over to the 2025 mock. We've done mocks for the 2025 list in the past, for the 2025 class in the past. I think this is my first, I'm going to say, like, very serious attempt at it. I think this is my first, like, really, like, we're now in 2025 season as far as recruiting goes. And I know that the 2024 class isn't technically wrapped. Ohio State's still trying to get some defensive tackles, but we're not talking about 2024 today. focus now, the main focus is now on 2025. So this is, I would say, my first truly sincere 2025 mock. So let's get to it. Quarterback, Taven St. Clair, Ohio kid. He's already in the recruiting class. That's not a prediction on my part. He's already committed. For what it's worth, I'm not afraid of, not concerned about him flipping, him decommitting at any point. There's nothing currently out there that would suggest that that's a possibility. Running backs. I have two running backs in this class. Running back Byron Lewis, who's a national player, absolute stud. And then in addition to Byron Lewis, I have running back Bo Jackson, running back / athlete Bo Jackson. We've talked about Bo Jackson before. I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing to be a running back with the name Bo Jackson. But he is an Ohio kid, and I think he's the second running back in this class. If for whatever reason, either of those recruitments fall apart, although I feel pretty good about both of them, or for whatever reason, either of those recruitments fall apart, Marquise Davis is another Ohio kid who I think Ohio State would go and grab in a heartbeat. Jordan Davis is also a guy who I think I've had in mocks in the past. I feel a little less confident on Jordan Davis now than I did maybe the last time I did a 2025 mock. So I think we're going Byron Lewis, Bo Jackson for now. Wide receivers. We're very used to, over the past couple of years, Ohio State having insane wide receiver classes. And I'm not shooting for the stars on this one. We have Javen Boggs, who's already committed in this class. Again, another absolute stud guy. Quincy Porter, another excellent wide receiver from the New Jersey area, I have in this class. And I also have an Ohio kid named Quentin Simmons Jr., who is excellent and I think is a borderline lock to join this class. Boggs right now, the only guy, he's out of Florida, the only guy who I have that is currently committed. But Quentin Simmons Jr. is a guy Ohio State needs to go get. I have a very Ohio heavy class. If that hasn't come apparent yet, it's going to become apparent very quickly. I have a very Ohio heavy class. I think Ohio State needs to refocus on recruiting the state of Ohio. And, as luck would have it, the recruiting or the high school talent in Ohio has gotten better, is getting better. I think Ohio is much more recruitable last year, this year, into 2026 already. I think is already, we have Austin joining us down in the chat. Already the 2026 class is looking pretty decent for Ohio. So in the age of NIL, in the age of players flipping last second more and more, I think it's incredibly important to focus in on the state of Ohio as a recruiting beast, as a talent base to go get kids who are going to be loyal to the institution. 2026, Austin says 2026 is going to be good, but I think with the right staff additions, 2025 could be elite. Oh, and there's just Kyle saying hi. Hi, Kyle. Yeah, I mean, I'm not even talking about the Ohio State classes. You jumped in with me talking specifically about Ohio as a talent producing state, as a high school talent creator. How it's picked up over the past couple years and is still getting better. Ohio is definitely top 10, maybe top 5. I mean, California, Texas, Florida, Georgia are your top 4. As you said, the same thing. Those are your top 4. Those are your S tiers. 5 can be debated. Yeah, I can think of a few different. North Carolina puts out a lot of great players. Virginia's putting out a lot of great players. Tennessee puts out a decent number of players. I would have to. We all know who the top 4 are, and that's that. I would have to put some thought into like who 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 are. Moving on. Hey, I was just talking about Javon Boggs. Austin, you're down in that area. Do you have any thoughts on Javon Boggs? Tight ends. Moving on to tight ends. Luka Gilbert. This is another Ohio player. I think this is another excellent relationship. I think a commitment here could even be imminent. Big fan of Luka Gilbert. Luka Gilbert is, I'll actually look this up as I'm typing it. Yeah, Lakota West. I couldn't remember which Lakota it was. As a, rising senior, 6'7", 233 already at tight end. I think, again, excellent pickup. Go get him. And then you have Nate Roberts. Nate Roberts was at one point committed to Notre Dame. He's from Oklahoma. So interesting recruitment already for him. I think Ohio State's in good position here. I don't feel as strongly about Nate Roberts as I feel about Luka Gilbert. Again, but that's why, we're refocusing on the Ohio side of things. That's why, we're, that's why we're focusing on, go get some Ohio guys. And even being from Oklahoma, I do like Ohio State's chances more than Oklahoma at this point. But it's potentially a long commitment. Not a guy who's down the street, but I think it's very realistic that Ohio State gets, and I do think this is a 2 tight end class. And I do think it's very likely that Ohio State ends up with both Gilbert and Roberts. And again, I think they do want 2 tight ends. Should either of those situations, should either of those relationships fall apart, tight end / athlete named Landon Pace out there. You hear that last name, Pace. He's from St. Louis. Yes. Son of the great Orlando Pace. Another option out there. Some other wide receivers. I know I already went over wide receivers, but some other Ohio State wide receivers to keep an eye on. Desi Jones, Andrew Marsh, Nyshawn Montgomery, Jamie French, who is currently committed to Alabama, but hey, it's early. And then Jackson Wiley, another familiar last name, another Ohio kid who I think could be a target at wide receiver. Now, if Ohio State has been terrible anywhere in recruiting recently, Ohio State has been terrible of recruiting the offensive line position. Now, thank God, the state of Ohio is starting to produce some really good offensive line talent. So Ohio State can get a lot of work done simply focusing on the state of Ohio. Simply focusing on the state of Ohio, Ohio State can get a lot of work done. Out of Toledo, you have Carter Lowe. Carter Lowe is, depending upon which service you're looking at, Carter Lowe's one of the best offensive tackles in the country. 24 Sports has him as a 5-star player, 30th overall player in the country, 4th best offensive tackle in the country. I think Ohio State, I think Ohio State's going to get Carter Lowe. Like, I think Carter Lowe wants to come to Ohio State. Ohio State obviously wants Carter Lowe. I think you just have to follow that up. You just got to close that deal. You got to close that deal. And I think Ohio State will be in great shape. As far as like, you try and get like that one offensive tackle every class who's like a difference making offensive tackle. I think that is your guy. And he is in state this year. Don't mess it up. Doesn't stop there, however. It does not stop there. I think Ohio State also has a great opportunity to get Nolan Davenport, an offensive tackle from Massillon, Ohio. I think Ohio State, again, that's another great pickup, I think, potentially for Ohio State. He's not as highly ranked at this time as Carter Lowe, but I think, a lot of times Ohio kids can be a little underranked early on, and that's okay because of restrictions, practice restrictions and whatnot. It's a little bit difficult for Ohio kids to go out and camp and be seen and all of that. Right. So it can be a little bit difficult to really move up the rankings, but yeah, I think Ohio State is in good shape if they go get those two offensive tackles. And I think that there are some interior guys from the state of Ohio that Ohio State would also be incredibly happy to pick up. Jeremy Adkins and Raphael Green are I think the two guys who I'm going to include in this class. Those are the two guys I'm going to include in this class as additional offensive linemen for Ohio State. From the state of Ohio. I believe both of these players are technically listed as tackles by 24/7 Sports. If you go look at the 24/7 Sports database, I believe both of them are, like I said, at this time, listed as offensive tackles. I do think, however, that I think their long-term future could potentially be on the interior of the offensive line. Atkins is very tall, so that might be prohibitive. But I think Raphael Green's a guy who Ohio State can get and develop. I think Atkins could be a tackle. Maybe if, you bring in both, you bring them in and you see, right? Like you bring them in and you see where they go. Cause maybe Davenport is a guy who you bring in as a tackle, but you could also move him to guard if you need to. And then same with Atkins, you bring Atkins in as a tackle, but maybe he's a guard and you do what you need to do. Eventually, potentially one of them gets bumped inside. There's also Tucker Caddis out there who I think is not someone I'm including in the mock at this time, but is definitely a guy you can keep an eye on. And Raphael Green, who I already mentioned, another guy who I think is a very talented offensive lineman who Ohio State could add to this class. So it's 4 guys from the state of Ohio. I actually gave you 5 names, although, as I said, I'm not including Cattus, Kattus, Kattus. If I'm mispronouncing that, and this is the Sloopcast, so I almost assuredly am mispronouncing that. I think is another excellent option for Ohio State, who I'm not including in this mock, but I'm keeping a close eye on. Now I think Ohio State, to go along with Carter Lowe, I think Ohio State needs to get a can't miss true offensive tackle out there. I think is like a 3 tackle, 2 guard class. And if you bring in all these guys who are all technically listed as tackles and you end up moving some of them to guard, I'm okay with that because I don't think they all project to tackle at the next level. But I am including one player who is not from the state of Ohio in this mock. His name is Ty Harwood. Ty Harwood. He is a what is my computer doing? Oh, excuse me, Ty Haywood. That's what my computer's doing. Ty Haywood. He is another offensive tackle. He's from Denton, Texas. Ohio State has pulled some guys out of Denton in the past. This is a high 4-star guy, 59th player in the country. either in or just outside the top 5 offensive tackles in the country. This is a possibility for Ohio State. Now, as far as the 5 names I've already given you on the offensive line, he's going to be the least likely, I think. Probably going to be the least likely guy, which, makes sense, right? He's the one guy not from Ohio. But I think it's also a guy who you could go get. So those are my 5 offensive linemen for this class. Carter Lowe, Ty Haywood, Nolan Davenport, Jameel Atkins, and Raphael Green. That's your offensive line for the mock. That's 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, 5 offensive linemen. Let's focus over on the defensive side. And by the way, I have out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 players on the offense. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them are from the state of Ohio. When I say I'm focusing in on the state of Ohio this year as a strategy that I think Ohio State can and should implement, I'm trying to lay out what I think is a good path forward for Ohio State. Building a strong, loyal base of Ohio kids, and also like some regional kids too, guys who are from nearby Ohio. And then sprinkling some elite national talent on top of that. And I think that's the path moving forward. Edge rush. I have first item, the best edge rusher out of the state of Ohio from Winton Woods, which is near Cincinnati, Justin Hill. This is a 4-star player, currently a 4-star player. Again, best edge rusher out of the state of Ohio. Ohio State can absolutely make this happen. I think, I don't know what else more to say about that. Quite frankly. And then you can also go get Cedric Works. I think Cedric Works, another kid from Ohio. He's from Clayton, Ohio, Northmont specifically. This is another 4-star pass rusher from the state of Ohio. I think we've, in the past couple recruiting classes, try to just go get the best pass rushers in the country, and it's not panned out for us late in the recruiting cycle. I think a strategy needs to change. I think you can go get Cedric Works. I think you can, go get Justin Hill. And then on top of that, you can pursue, hopefully get, but absolutely pursue then an elite national guy. That's how we have to operate these things, in my opinion, in the future. So I am adding a elite national guy on top of the 2 Ohio kids. I am adding Zahir Manthis. He is from Emotep Institute in Philadelphia. He is a high 4-star guy, 77th overall player in the country, best player out of the state of Pennsylvania. I think, we're going outside of Ohio, but Ohio State has had great success recruiting Pennsylvania, even Philadelphia recently, which Philadelphia, Ohio State was always good at Western PA, but they've, been crossing over into Philadelphia recently, most notably Marvin Harrison Jr. So I think Zahir Manthis is just, and I'm not 100% sure at this time, how all of his relationships are shaking down at this point. But, and of course, I think there are other defensive ends, national talent, outside of Ohio, tight ends who Ohio State can and should be pursuing. I think that there's a lot of great defensive ends out there, obviously. I think Jameel Ham is another guy who you could be looking at, is another defensive end I have noted in my notes. So yeah, but for right now, for the sake of this mock, I'm sticking with Justin Hills here, Mathis, and Cedric Works. At defensive tackle, Do you think I was going to go position group without including an Ohio kid? You are wrong. I am absolutely 100% going to be including yet another Ohio kid in the defensive tackle class for the 2024 class. Brandon Caesar from Cleveland Heights, Ohio. High 3-star guy. I think Ohio State really likes him. He's already been getting crystal balls for Ohio State. Absolute win of a pickup for Ohio State. I think it's a relatively easy win. Got to lock down Ohio early. And I think Brandon Caesar is an excellent pickup. And adding on top of Caesar, we're going back to Philadelphia. We're going to talk about Maxwell Roy. He is from St. Joseph's Prep High School. Top 100 player in the country, top 10 defensive tackles in the country, already 6'3", 270, and is the number 2 player out of the state of Pennsylvania. I have Ohio State kind of trying to rob Pennsylvania of its 2 best players is where we're currently sitting. Linebacker. At linebacker, if you think do you think I'm going to go another position group without an Ohio kid? You're wrong. I have an Ohio kid at every single position. I have an Ohio kid at every single position. Now, this time it was pretty easy. Eli Lee, linebacker, state of Ohio, is already committed to the class. He is out of Akron, Archbishop Hoban, already committed to this class. You might look at his recruiting number. He's a 3-star guy right now. Not I would say underanalyzed at this point, quite frankly. If we're looking at his recruiting profile, if we look at, sort of what's been written, what's been analyzed, I would say as far as the national services are concerned, I would say he's just underanalyzed at this point. I don't think that recruiting services have a good feel for him yet. So we'll see after, the national guys sort of catch up what they think about Eli Lee. And I think he'll be higher than an 88 personally, once they start doing their homework on him. In addition to Eli Lee, we have Maddox Arnold. Maddox Arnold is out of Elder in Cincinnati. Excuse me. No, I'm sorry. I have him on my watch list. I have Maddox Arnold on my watch list as another linebacker that Ohio State could pursue. Who I do have, however, is linebacker Dante McClellan. Dante McClellan is the guy who I ended up putting in this recruiting class. All right. Yeah. Dante McClellan. Moving on from the linebackers, cornerbacks. Oh boy, cornerbacks. Ohio State has already had 2 big wins here. 2 big wins at the cornerback position. Yesterday, as we record this, 2 days ago, as the day we release it, Ohio State picked up Devin Sanchez. Devin Sanchez is, according to most, if not all services, the best cornerback in the 2025 class. This is an enormous win for Ohio State. He's out of North Shore High School in Houston, Texas. The composite ranking has him as the 2nd best cornerback, but the 24/7 Sports proper ranking has him at number 1 and the 4th overall player in the country and the number 1 player out of the state of Texas. And he has committed to Ohio State. But it's the recruitment's not over. The recruitment for Devin Sanchez is not over. Getting Devin Sanchez is amazing and fantastic, but near an entire year out from the early National Signing Day, this recruitment is far from over. Just, getting the commitment is one thing. Keeping the commitment will be another. So we'll see how that ends up. We'll see how that plays out. Ohio State is at the very least in the lead right now. And I pray and I hope, and we'll see what happens when people start throwing money at Devin Sanchez. When we'll see what happens. That's really all that can be said about that. Already in the class as well, Blake Woodby. Blake Woodby is another excellent player. He is not from the state of Ohio, but another excellent player who recruited to Ohio State not long back. Devin Woodby is just outside, again, depending upon which service you're looking at, either is or is just outside the top 10 cornerbacks in the country. He's pretty consensusly a top 100 player in the country. Blake Woodby is an amazing player. He's out of Maryland. So I'm going to, at this point, start counting Maryland as like a regional recruiting territory. Maryland's not super close to Ohio, but it's a lot closer than Texas. It's a lot closer than Texas, a lot closer than Georgia, a lot closer than Florida. So I am going to start counting Maryland. Ohio State's had a lot of success in Philadelphia and Maryland and Virginia, sort of that greater Northeast corridor portion of the United States. Ohio State's had a lot of success in that area. And I'm going to, because it's a Big Ten territory at this point, I am going to start including, the Maryland and Virginia area and the New Jersey area as regional territory for Ohio State. So I feel a lot better about Blake Woodby entering and remaining in this class. Now it's really, really difficult. He committed all the way back in October. It's hard to keep an out of state, even if it's a regional territory. It's hard to keep a kid, committed for that long. So we'll see how it plays out. And again, those are two non-Ohio kids who have already committed, but I have two Ohio kids. Well, one of them's, we'll talk let's talk about Trey McNutt first. Let's talk about Trey McNutt. Now there is at least some conversation at this point. Is Trey McNutt a cornerback or is he a safety? There is conversation. There is conversation there, right? I am for now going to be talking about Trey McNutt as a cornerback. For the sake of this class, I'll be talking about Trey McNutt as a cornerback. That might change, but next time I do this mock, I might change that. But for right now, for the sake of this mock, I will be including him in the cornerback class. And I do think that this is a 4-person cornerback class if all plays out the way Ohio State wants it to play out. He's out of Shaker Heights, Cleveland, Ohio. If you're old and you're wondering, McNutt, didn't Ohio State use? Yes. He is Ohio State legacy. In addition to Trey McNutt, we have not totally technically, depending upon who you ask. He currently goes to Conroe High School in Texas, and his name is Dorian Brew. Dorian Brew, however, is a Buckeye legacy. I believe his mother used to run track for Ohio State, if I'm remembering that correctly. He lived in Ohio until semi-recently. He spent most of his life in Ohio. He is currently in Texas. I consider him to be an Ohio kid. For all things considered. all things considered, Dorian Brew, I'm counting as an Ohio kid, even though he is from Texas currently. He is currently in Texas. He is from Ohio. So I'm going to include Dorian Brew as far as my Ohio counter. And that brings the cornerback class, the mock anyway, to 4 guys. Once again, Blake Woodby, Devin Sanchez already committed, adding Trey McNutt and Dorian Brew, a 4-person cornerback class. Hey, Chop, how you doing? Turn the Discord screen back on for a second. Tim Walton is a stud. I agree. Tim Walton, I don't think gets talked about enough. What he's doing at Ohio. I think this cornerback class is already on lock, honestly. I love his inspirational speeches daily. Yeah. And again, like, I think he has this cornerback class on lock already. Now, again, I already talked about keeping Sanchez in the class is going to be difficult. Maybe Dorian Brew's actually a safety. Or excuse me, Trey McNutt is actually a safety. But man, this cornerback class already looks like it's coming together or has come together. I don't think it'll be that difficult. Mama Sanchez is all in. Yeah, man, but it's 2024, and once NIL money starts flying around, who knows? I'm just saying, who knows? It's the Wild West out there. And it's 13 months until, or excuse me, 11 months until National Signing Day. They don't seem to be that family. It's money, man. Like, if life-changing money comes from somewhere, and like, I don't know, like, there's no judgment from me. If someone's offering you life-changing money, I can't judge you for turning that down. That's all. Safety. We're almost done. We have 2 more players. I have, one Ohio kid, one not Ohio kid. What constitutes life-changing money? Amount. I think that depends upon the financial situation you come from. Honestly. Like, my idea of life-changing money might be different than someone who's significantly less well-off than me, or someone who's significantly more well-off than me. So I don't think there's a specific number to say what that is. Out of Virginia, which again, I am counting as regional recruiting territory at this point, Messiah Delhomme. Now, again, no. This time it's a no. If you remember a Panthers quarterback, last name Delhomme, not related. I'm just gonna assume, and you're gonna trust me. Yeah, Jake Delhomme. This is Messiah Delhomme. He is a safety out of, like I said, Warwick High School, which is in Newport News, Virginia. By most services, he's approximately top 10 safety, approximately top 100 player in the country. Cousins, maybe distant. I'm just going to say they don't look like they're related. And you're going to believe me. We're going to leave it at that. And then staying within the state of Ohio for our second safety, because that is what we're doing here. We're staying inside the state of Ohio for our second safety. And I'll say this, and I will say this, I'm not 100% sure that this individual is in fact a safety. Wayne Warrior. No. Not 100% sure this individual is a safety. I think that is still up for grabs. I think some people have him as a corner. Some people have him as a wide receiver even. Cody Haddad from St. Ignatius in Cleveland is the second safety I have in this class. Fahim Delane. I have Fahim Delane on the watch list. I think that would be amazing. I believe he's the best safety in the country. Is he not, Chop? I believe he's the number one safety in the country. I guess probably depending upon which service you look at, is top safety in the country. I think there's a relationship there with Ohio State. It's not impossible. Like, there is a relationship there. But I'm just not projecting it at this time. Some other names to throw out there, keep an eye on, in the defensive back room. Dwayne Galloway, as far as I can tell, not related. Dwayne Galloway, a cornerback from the state of Ohio. Ohio State also has good relationships with Devin Williams, Mark Sanchez IV, Mason Alexander. We already brought up safety Fahim Delane. And I'd also say keep an eye out on Jaden Hudson. At linebacker, additional names to look out for, Ohio kid, Maddox Arnold, Weston Port, who I think is out of Philadelphia. Anthony Saka, I think is also out of Philadelphia. I don't have that written down. I should have written it down in my notes. And Elijah Melendez, who just committed to Miami not long ago, but I don't consider that recruitment over, for what it's worth. Yeah, we've become recruiting rivals with Miami somehow. I don't know how or why that happened. Some additional defensive line names, Isaiah White, Gertie Solsted, maybe, Jamel Ham, some additional offensive linemen to keep an eye on. Micah DeBose. We already talked about Tucker Caddis, Douglas Atu, Matty Augustine, Jalen Matthews, Caden Strayhorn, and Chauncey Gooden, who I believe is a guy who I had in my last recruiting class. And I think that's everybody. I think I mentioned everyone who is either in the mock or in my watch list. So that's our 2025 DeBoss, former Georgia commit. Yes, he is. And I think and again, I have him in the watch list specifically because I think there's a possibility, but they're not in the mock. So I don't think it's a strong possibility, or at least not strong enough to make the top 5. Because that's essentially what it is. I'm picking like the top 5 most likely, and I'm throwing them in the mock. That's essentially how it works, right? All right. Not going to spend a ton of time on the 2026. This is just a quick 2026 primer. This is just a primer. This isn't a mock. This is just a primer. Top 5 is who we should go after. No, what I'm saying... Well, I know. I think we've been doing that recently, and it's not been working. I think you build a strong base of Ohio-based players who are going to be more loyal to the program, who aren't going to transfer out after 1 year or aren't going to flip at the end of the recruiting cycle. You build a strong base of Ohio kids to build out the roster, and then you try and get elite guys to mix in. Loyal like Chip. Chip came home, did he not? And I know he transferred out, but it was what was best for him. I don't think it hurt Ohio State, quite frankly. I think Ohio State is fine. Like, he's going to go someplace and he's going to get some snaps, and that's going to be good for everybody. All right, 2026 primer. Quarterbacks to keep an eye on. Ohio State already has a really, I say already, but like for quarterbacks, this is prime recruiting time. For 2026, this is already prime recruiting time. Jared Curtis. Jared Curtis is already, there's a lot of buzz already there's a lot of buzz for Ohio State and Jared Curtis. So I would keep a very close eye on that relationship. We'll see where it goes. He's from Nashville. One of the best quarterbacks in the country, depending upon what service you look at. One of the top 1, 2, 3 quarterbacks in the country, one of the top players in the country. Keep a close eye on Jared Curtis and Ohio State. Some other quarterbacks that Ohio State has good relationships with, Ohio player, Nathan Barnhard, quarterbacks, Will Griffin and Julian Lewis. Although I think Lewis just committed to USC, but again, it's early. It's all very, very early. These are the 2026 kids after all. Running backs, Javen Malloy, Savon Hitter, and Messiah Mickens. Already there's a player signed, or well, it's committed, not signed, committed to the 2026 class. That is wide receiver Chris Henry Jr. And yes, Cincinnati fans, that name is familiar, and it is familiar for a reason. That is in fact the late Chris Henry Sr.'s son. And yeah, he's a stud. He's already a stud. He's already amazing. And he's already a Buckeye. And is being raised by Pac-Man Jones. Yeah. And apparently, like, if you, again, you're worried about, well, will he stay committed to Ohio State? Apparently Pac-Man really likes the idea of Chris Henry Jr. playing wide receiver for Brian Hartline for Ohio State. So feels like it's a good situation. Jabril Brady, I think, is another wide receiver who Ohio State already has an excellent relationship with, and we should all keep an eye on. Peyton Cook is an Ohio player who, again, I think there's a good early relationship between he and Ohio State. Some other names that are, early target list for wide receiver, Ohio State 2026, Malachi Toney, Brody Keefe, CJ Sadler, and Aaron Gregory. Name all the SFE. Oh, South Florida Express. Thank you for filling that in. Early tight end to watch. All targets. Yeah, I mean, it always starts that way, right? Always starts that way. Tight end, Xavier Tiller, early relationship there. Again, I think Ohio State has another chance to put together a really good recruiting class of offensive linemen strictly within the state of Ohio. I think that is totally plausible, totally possible. Once again, to build a really strong offensive line class in Ohio. That would be ideal. The way we recruit offensive linemen, yeah, it would be. Inside the state of Ohio right now, Maxwell Riley, who I think is already a stud and is already excellent, and Ohio State does already have a good relationship with. Sam Greer, Landry, I don't know if it's Breed or Breedy. And those are all offensive tackles. And then interior offensive lineman Will Conroy are all excellent offensive linemen within the borders of Ohio, who I think Ohio State could get an excellent start at. If we have talent, Ohio is always half I assume you mean 1 or 2 years behind the South. So if these pups are biting, get them. Yeah, 1-2. I'd also just say, because I was talking about this earlier before you got in here, it also has to do with Ohio high school practice rules. A lot of the Ohio kids can't go and participate in camps because they only have like tight practice windows. And if you can't go and like show out in camps, it's hard for a lot of the recruiting services to properly needs addressed OSHA. Yeah. So it's hard for them to get a lot of these early rankings. A lot of Ohio players are simply under analyzed by the computer services, and that's the Ohio High School Athletic Association's fault. Some additional names to watch. Yes. Additional offensive line names to watch from outside the state: Deron Parks, Jackson Cantwell, Tyler Merrill, and Micah Smith. So those are some offensive names to keep an eye out. Those are your 2026 primer names on the offensive side. Defensive side, have some defensive tackles. I don't really have any defensive ends yet, so no defensive ends. Anyone from Mater Day? I don't think I have any Mater Day kids in the 2026 class. Some defensive tackles. None of these guys from Ohio. Deuce Geralds, Jakeem Stewart, Tony Cumberland, and Bryce Perry Wright. Linebacker, I do have a couple Ohio names. Cam Thomas and Storm Miller. Some additional names outside of Ohio. CJ Sibley, Talone Lilly. I mean, it's definitely not Lily. It's LLI, so Lil. Not sure. And Samo Mola. Those last two names are Samoan, or at least Pacific Islander, so I'm butchering them, so I apologize for that. We need some more all-name kids. Who's the next Steel Chambers? Who is the next Steel Chambers? If you're still watching late in this episode on YouTube, who's the next Steel Chambers for Ohio State? Who is the next all-name kid for Ohio State? Let us know in the comments. And make sure to like the video and do all that YouTube-y stuff. Cornerbacks. Again, Ohio State's producing some really good defensive back talent. Two early names to keep an eye on. Victor Singleton, cornerback, and cornerback Albert Hill. Outside of Ohio, there is, I assume his name is Zach. It's spelled with an E. I assume it's not Zek. I've never seen Zach spelled with a E before, but I'm going to go with Zach Fort. And safeties, Zealous Hicks and Jahir Edwards. Some additional athletes to keep an eye on. We don't really have positions for these guys yet. There is Justice Fitzpatrick. And once again, if the name Fitzpatrick, of course, Fitzpatrick is a fairly common name, but yeah, I believe he is the younger brother of the Alabama / Pittsburgh safety. And we have, he, by the way, could be a wide receiver or a safety, apparently. We have Ephraim White, who might be a wide receiver, might be a cornerback. And then Kendra Harrison. Kendra Harrison might be a pass rusher. He might be a tight end. He also might go play forward in college basketball. We're not even sure what sport Harrison's pursuing yet at this time. He apparently might be the best. He might also be the best forward in high school in the 2026 class right now, or at least one of the best forwards in high school right now. The 2026 class, at least. So we don't even know if Condre Harrison is even going to play football yet, but apparently if he does, he'll be one of the best tight ends and or pass rushers in the country. And that's your 2026 primer. We'll take him for that too. Yeah, just he can go start playing basketball in January, because we all know that's when Holtman's Buckeyes need additional talent, is in January, is when the season tends to fall apart. Let's see how we do against Wisconsin this upcoming. By the way, that's our social screen. We have a social screen in the Discord server this Wednesday night. We need some backcourt help. Yeah, well, I mean, keep in mind, once again, there's a 2026 kid. So, like, you know, not exactly showing up on campus anytime soon. All right, that's the end of the show. That was a busy show. I threw a lot of information at everybody. My throat kind of hurts, if I'm being honest. Not having Kyle here leads to a lot of talking on my part. My throat's sore. I don't feel great. Good job, not Kyle. Thanks. But yeah, we went over some portal updates. I delivered what I'm calling my first earnest 2025 mock, including a full short list of targets to keep an eye on for the 2025 class. And we also did a primer, what we like to call a primer for the 2026 class. Just some names to keep an eye out on. That's it. Just some names, some positions that Ohio State currently has some relationships with. So we'll see how that goes. And we're just going to call that the end of the show, I think. Tonight's ending music brought to you by a Columbus-based band called Snarls. Once again, the name of that band is Snarls. I see Chop Daddy is typing. I'm going to let him have the final word. Then we're going to kick it off to Snarls, I think. Although maybe he's not typing anymore. The pressure's on you now, Chop. All the pressure's on you. Join the Discord. Thanks, Chop. Everyone join the Discord. Once again, we'll be doing a social screen this Wednesday. Ohio State versus Wisconsin. We all get in a voice channel in the server and watch the game together. It's a lot of fun. And give to the Patreon. Guys, $3 a month. It's only $3 a month. And it's even less money if you sign up for the whole year up front. You get a 12% discount. I think it's only like $32. $32 to support the podcast. And by the way, like, none of this is free. I have to pay for an Adobe license. I have to keep the computer updated. None of this is free. I have to pay Discord money to keep the server at a certain level. None of this is free. There are expenses. It's not just me and a cheap Dell that I picked up off the street and a webcam. Like this is actually expensive to keep going. We love doing it. We don't make much money off of this at all. And basically the little bit of money we do make, we put right back into the podcast. And it's all basically funded by the patrons. We get some Spreaker money too. The podcast, they throw the ads in, which I was supposed to do manual ad breaks and I totally forgot. Oops. We do get some money off of that. And if you want to avoid those Spreaker ads, you get your own podcast feed through Patreon that doesn't have those ads. So if you hate fast forwarding or sitting through the ads that pop up in the middle, the end, the beginning of the show, for $32 a year, you can make them all go away. Or $3 a month, whichever sounds like less money to you, whichever is more persuasive to you, you can do either. Jared don't have a life and will always interact. It's a backhanded compliment, but I'll take it. I'm always in the Discord server. I am always in the Discord server. I'm here answering questions, getting into fights with people, good, healthy debates, I should call them, but you know, it is what it is. Completely worth it. It's a great community. I appreciate that, Chop. I think it really is. I think it really is a good community. Even if I have to put them in line every once in a while. Not you, Chop. You're a perfect angel. Yeah. Notice how I didn't keep a straight face when I said it. Although he is one of the mods here. So, you know, end the show. That's a good idea. Tonight's ending music, once again, brought to you by Snarls. So with all that being said, I'd like to encourage everyone to drink local beer, listen to local music, and of course, support your local podcasters. Once again, this is Snarls.